Ladies and gentlemen, podcasting since 2005. You're listening to Gamertag Radio with your hosts, podcaster Hall of Famer Danny Pena, the always opinionated Paris Lilly, and from outside of the norm, Peter Toledo. This is Gamertag Radio.
All right, so live in New York City, and wow, we're like in a nice little studio here in New York City, and I have a special guest. We've been emailing each other now for a couple weeks, and you want to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hello, Danny. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Jason Schreier. I'm the news editor at Kotaku.com, and we are currently in our studio, Kotaku Studio. This is where the magic happens.
So this is what you do, the live stream, the podcast.
You can see our green screen for streams. You can see our microphone set up for podcasts, for our podcast, Kotaku Split Screen. Yeah, this is where it all happens.
But you're not only a journalist, but also an author?
Yes.
I also consider you a podcaster, too.
A podcaster, yes.
And
Jack
of course,
of all trades.
And of course, a gamer.
Yes. Right? And newly minted Dungeon Master. I just started playing D&D for the first time.
Oh,
so
really?
That's how I'm going to describe myself from now on. I'm just going to be the Dungeon Master.
That's cool. It's cool. But let's go back, man.
Sure.
How you became a journalist? Let's go pre early days before Kotaku and all that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in journalism, like way back in the day. I was on my high school newspaper. I was actually editor-in-chief of the high school newspaper, and then got into it at college, was really into journalism, and then right afterwards, I started freelance reporting, like as a journalist for local news outlets and papers and that sort of thing. And what I did was covered just like whatever they wanted me to cover. And I remember I would go to all these like local government meetings, and it was just the most boring thing on the planet. Like, you do not know boredom until you've been in a zoning board planning meeting. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, but I know that I want to do journalism. What could I be doing that would be more interesting? And eventually it occurred to me that why don't I try writing about video games? And I thought this was like some pipe dream. And I started like pitching articles and reviews and all that jazz to different places. And eventually I got a gig. I got hired. I saw this job opening was opening at Wired.com under Chris Kohler, who coincidentally now works with me at Kotaku. But back then he was running the Wired video game blog, and I applied, and he wound up hiring me to be a contributing writer over there. And so I was there for a couple of years, learning from him, learning all sorts of things from him and working under him. And then Stephen Totillo sent me an email at the beginning of 2012 and was like, hey, I have an opportunity for you. And he wound up getting me to come work for him because he was just taking over Kotaku from Brian Crescente at the time. So it was like he got a chance with that new leadership to hire some new people, and he brought me on. And so I've been there ever since, 6.5 years now.
And time flies, man.
Yeah,
time
it's crazy.
The thing is, the industry is so small. Everybody knows each other. So every time I go to E3, I go to the hangout where everybody, is chilling.
The Fig.
Yeah. Yeah, the Fig and other places too. But everybody's there. Everybody knows each other, man. So the industry is so small. So it's cool to see that you started in one area, then somebody else that you probably met. Hey, come over here to
There's
Kotaku
a lot of cool connections.
That's really cool. So do you remember what was like your first article?
I actually started, I think I met you with Tina and Tina Mini, who started at the same time as me
shout
as
to Tina.
Kotaku.
Yeah.
So we've been close friends for a long time.
Yeah, she used to work for Complex too.
Right, before that. That's when I first met her, when she was at Complex. I remember we first met through Twitter, but in person we first met on a bus to PAX East, and she and I became friends, just like riding the bus together to PAX from New York to Boston for PAX.
And that's
East.
a 3-hour
so a lot of time to get to know each other. So what was your question? What was my first article?
The question was, do you remember what was like your first article that just went?
No, not at all. I don't remember at all, because it was like you just kind of like jump head first into the pool. Like you just have to keep swimming and see what happens. And like sometimes you like sink under the water for a little bit and screw up, and you learn from your mistakes and learn to keep swimming and keep moving and moving and moving.
I know you as the guy that's always leaking Assassin's Creed, man. Stuff, man.
Well, important distinction. I'm not leaking. People leak stuff to me, and I report on leaks. Yeah. Important distinction there. But yeah, people. It's actually I've had a lot of. I become known for like reporting on a lot of different scoops and stuff like that. It's not my favorite thing to do. I prefer stories about stuff that people aren't going to find out about anyway. So like, you know that you're eventually going to learn what the next Assassin's Creed is. I would rather be like, here's the development story behind the next Assassin's Creed. And that's why I was super stoked to be able to write this book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, that I'm sure some people have heard of, but it's basically a collection of these stories that are like, these are stories you're not going to find out elsewhere. There's stories about how these games were made and the kind of conflicts and trials and tribulations that goes into them. And so that's the work that I'm most passionate about. It isn't being like, oh, here's what the next game is. Yeah. It's more like, all right, here are stories that only we are in a position to be able to tell.
I'm definitely gonna ask you a couple of questions about the book, but before that, when somebody from the inside comes up to you and they're like, "Yeah, I got the latest scoop," you know, when do you decide, like, okay, this is the right time for me to post this? Because I know you can't just base it on just one source.
Right. It depends. It's a case-by-case thing, right? So, like, let me give you an example. So, like, with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for example, I had heard ages ago, months and months ago, oh, this next game is set in ancient Greece. It's pre Assassin's Creed Origins and blah, 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 like a bunch of details for it. I wasn't super interested in reporting that, so I wasn't like actively pursuing it because I felt like this is something that people don't need to know. It's something that people are just going to find out about anyway. But then you look at something else, you look at Fallout 76, and what happened with that was, that's an interesting case because Bethesda put out this teaser countdown, and it was like 24 hours, please stand by, that whole thing, right? And at that point, I knew what Fallout 76 was, but I wasn't going to report on it because I knew it would get announced in 24 hours anyway. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to just spoil this just for the sake of spoiling it. And then they announced it, and then they put out this teaser trailer that made everybody think it was like another single player Fallout game. And at that point I was like, all right, these guys are taking pre-orders on this game. They're pretending that they're like making it seem like it's something. I got to tell people what this actually is. And so I reported, hey, this is an online survival game. And got a lot of hatred from fans who didn't want to believe me, but obviously it turned out to be that.
But why people were hating it?
Well, people just kill the messenger. It's like when, like, anytime I report any sort of bad news, people will just like go after me, like make up ways that it's, I remember at one point a couple of years ago, I had reported that No Man's Sky was delayed from June until like a couple months later. And, the subreddit just exploded. It was like all sorts of craziness. One person like posted, I just called 30 GameStops, and here is why Kotaku is lying, because all these GameStops said the game wasn't delayed. That guy had some egg on his face. But yeah, people just want any way to possibly not believe the news. It's just a psychological thing. But anyway, with the Fallout thing, my logic was like, I don't want to spoil the announcement just for the sake of spoiling the announcement, but like at a certain point, it becomes my responsibility as a reporter, and I feel like I'm doing a disservice to readers by not telling them what I've heard. And that, to me, felt like one of those examples.
Send us your feedback or questions. Give us a call at 786-273-7GTR. Email us at fanmail@gamertagradio.com or leave a message on speakpipe.com/gamertagradio.
Was there, I mean, the relationship-wise with the publishers, how's it been going for you guys? Because I remember there was a time with Kotaku that you guys were not getting review copies from certain companies.
Well, Bethesda hasn't talked to us in 5 years, since 2013.
So you're like, you know what? I'm going to just put this news.
Well, that I don't even consider that. No, Bethesda, I mean, they're just babies. Their marketing team has not been professional to us, and they are what they are. But yeah, they haven't talked to us in 5 years or so. Our relationships with other publishers are just hit and miss, up and down, just like any other companies. In general, we try not to care too much about our relationship with game companies. Like, we feel like we can do our jobs perfectly well without caring that much. I certainly like talking to developers, and I appreciate it when game publishers let the guard down a little bit and let me talk to people and let me do interviews that they can be
open.
more candid in. And some publishers are much better about this than others. But yeah, it just depends.
You know, it was cool. I was browsing Twitter, and I can't remember exactly where this happened, but Phil Spencer was on stage. I think he had a presentation, and he showed your book.
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh snap, that's pretty cool." So,
Yeah,
how was
that's
your
cool.
reaction? Because were you expecting that to happen?
No, I had no idea. It was cool. It's cool to see that people are digging it. It's cool to see that people are appreciating it. Because I'm trying to just like fill a hole of books that I don't think there are a lot of right now, and I hopefully that'll lead the charge, because Blood, Sweat, and Pixels did really well. And I actually think I've heard from other colleagues in the industry that like it's video game books are getting some more traction now, because people can look at Blood, Sweat, and Pixels and be like, hey, this was a bestseller. Maybe gamers do actually read. Maybe gaming books can actually do pretty well. So that's really cool. Been really cool to see, and hopefully it leads to a lot more of this sort of thing. So yeah, it's been really cool. I've been really grateful for the opportunity.
What was there any challenging moments while working on that book?
Oh yeah, it was all challenging. I mean, the grind of just like working on it took its toll, because I was still working full time at Kotaku, and now I'm going through this again with the second book because I'm crazy. But like, it's basically daytime work on Kotaku, and then nights and weekends do book stuff. So it's a lot of like interviews and transcribing and reporting and writing. It's a very time consuming process. I have to warn my wife that like, hey, you're not going to see me from like October till January of this year. Just warning you, like I'm going to be sitting in the living room, sitting at my desk, like just entirely focused on this book.
Was there content in the first book that you had to remove and you decide, I'm going to probably have it for the second book?
No. The second book is
fresh?
entirely different.
Okay.
It's a very different thing. I'm not super. I'm still like structuring it and figuring out exactly what it's going to be, but it's not. So the first book was divided into 10 different stories, right? Each story was about how a different game was made. The next book is going to have similar like behind the scenes reporting, but it's going to be about a different subject. So it'll be structured pretty differently, I think, unless it winds up turning into the same thing. But no, none of it it's all fresh material and like totally new reporting and stuff like that.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So when you're planning to release this, the second book?
Hopefully, if I make my deadlines, which is a tough one, hopefully fall of 2019.
Fall of 2019.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Very cool, man. Let's see what else we could talk about, man. Industry. I know there's been some rumors, a couple things. I think today there's something been posting about Microsoft, 2 devices they've been working on. Your thoughts on that, man?
I think it's interesting. It's been interesting to see that. I think that rumor involved one of them was like a streaming device.
A streaming device, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything about that stuff, but I think it is interesting to see how all these big publishers are moving towards streaming. The big rumors that I've been hearing and reporting on involve Google and their attempts to enter gaming with a big streaming platform. So I think that'll be a really huge thing. I think everyone is doubling down on streaming. I think people, even though the next gen rumors have really started coming, I think, as I wrote on Kotaku a few months ago, the buzz that I'm hearing suggests that this is 2 years away. Like, we're looking at 2020. We're not looking at next year PS5 coming out. We're not looking at next year Xbox 2 or whatever coming out. We're looking at like 2 years away.
2 years. Yeah.
So hold your horses when it comes to next gen.
Yeah, don't get too hyped.
Especially with the streaming stuff, the technology isn't quite there yet. People are still have a lot, bandwidth issues are still a very big thing. Like who has stable enough internet or reliable enough internet without any caps and without having to pay extra fees that they're like totally going to be all in on streaming. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, how's that going to change in 2 years? Is it going to be faster?
That's a big question.
It's a mystery when it comes to that. You know?
Total mystery. A lot of these companies are just kind of doubling down on the idea, because the idea in concept, it's pretty cool, because it's like, if you don't have that barrier of having to spend $400 on a console and like hook it up and stuff, and if you can pretty easily just put on something like play The Witcher 3 in your Google Chrome browser, which I think is one of Google's like pie in the sky ideas, then suddenly you have access to like an entirely new gaming audience. Like if you look at Fortnite and the barrier that they removed was by making it free. And when you make something free, it's suddenly you reach like a whole new level of audience. And like I think there are a ton of like untapped markets out there that could be reached by streaming. So that's pretty cool to see. And the more accessible games are to everyone, I think the better we're all going to be.
So I know you said 2020 for Xbox.
For both PlayStation and Xbox.
And PlayStation and Xbox? What about Google?
Google, I don't know.
That's a huge mystery too?
I think that with Google, they tend to just like soft launch stuff. So I wouldn't be shocked to see them even launch something like later this year, quietly like soft launch something, or like next year or something like that. Just like be like, and now we're opening this up to alpha users or whatever. They're going to be very chill about it. They're not going to be like, and here is our big mega reveal event. At least not until, yeah, I mean, that's just not their style. They're less like Microsoft and Sony with the like E3 sizzle necessity. I think you'll see them be a little different about their approach.
I think PlayStation might be 2021.
It's possible.
I don't see them releasing it at the same time as Xbox.
Yeah, I should say I'm not predicting an exact time frame. I'm just saying that like the buzz that I'm hearing is that it's a ways down the road, like at least 2 years away is the way that I would put it. Like at least 2020 is what the roadmap that people are looking at.
So I know there was talks behind the scenes at E3 about the relationship with Microsoft and Nintendo. I know in the past, I've gotten games from Microsoft. I think it was Via Pinata on the DS.
Minecraft recently.
Now. And I think Bungie was also working on a Halo game for
Halo DS. Yeah.
Never came out, but there was people that actually seen it back in the days. Do you see Microsoft maybe releasing older content to a whole new crowd that never gotten like an Xbox game, maybe for the Nintendo Switch? Because I think their relationship is getting...
Halo 6 on the Nintendo Switch. I don't know. It'd be
not the new games, more the
older games, like back catalog.
They're not losing money if they do that.
I don't know. It'd be cool to see like rare replay on the Nintendo Switch. That would be a cool one. Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them since they're all buddy now, and I don't see Microsoft doesn't really see themselves as like as much of a hardware company anymore because they're being totally agnostic, platform agnostic with PC and Xbox. And granted, it's only Windows that they're announcing, like putting stuff out on, but like I could totally see them just breaking the boundaries entirely, and especially if they see it as a way to just like take more shots at Sony. That would be big for them.
Now with Bungie, I this is my feeling. This is what I think. I think that maybe after the next Destiny game, they probably will sell that to Activision. I think they did the same thing with Halo. They sold it to Microsoft, right? I think they're probably going to give it to somebody else, man, and they're working on probably something else. I think they've been so stressed out with this game, man.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the Bungie Activision relationship has not worked out for both sides the way they wanted it to. There has been a lot of tension there over the years. And yeah, Bungie is locked into this crazy contract. We already saw Bungie announce that they have this huge $100 million investment from NetEase, a publisher in China, to make something totally new. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them eventually take steps to just totally sever their ties to all things Destiny and just focus on something totally new that doesn't involve Activision at all.
In your point of view, why do you think the relationship wasn't that great?
I think there are a million different reasons. I actually touch upon a lot of them in Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, because there's a chapter on Destiny in the book, and a lot of it's that Bungie was making this thing that games are hard to make, new IPs are hard to make. Making something that's like a totally new genre is really hard to make. It's just impossible to conceive. I think Activision had certain expectations. Bungie might have under-delivered, and then Activision fights back, and there's all sorts of reasons that a publisher and developer can have tension. I think Marty O'Donnell and his tweets and that whole public brouhaha, which I won't get into all the details, but short version is he was very publicly critical of Activision while still working at Bungie. So that did not help at all. That exacerbated the tension between the two companies. I think Bungie missing deadlines did not help. Bungie having to delay Destiny 1 and then having to delay Destiny 2. And it's been a lot of things. Bungie has not, the game has not lived up to the sales and revenue expectations that Activision was hoping And yeah, we saw with Destiny 2 that that game did not have a great tale. It did not like keep people engaged the way that they were hoping. So yeah, tons of reasons for that relationship going sour.
Was there any games that surprised you at this past E3?
Game announcements that surprised me?
Or games actually you got to get some hands on.
I was pleasantly surprised by a lot of stuff I played. I really enjoyed Spider-Man. I really enjoyed playing Anthem. I was pleasantly surprised by how good it felt to like zip around in the jetpack in Anthem.
But speaking about Anthem, there's been from the outside people that only got to see the presentation from EA Play.
Mm-hmm.
You got to play it. Great. Every person I know that got to play it.
Yeah,
great feedback.
It feels great.
But for me, that I got to see it from the presentation.
Yeah, it was a disappointing presentation. You got to watch the actual demo they put on YouTube like a couple weeks ago after E3. Mm-hmm. That makes it look a lot better than the presentation. But that game, we'll have no idea until it's actually out. What it really feels like to play. Because if you remember Destiny, nobody had any sense of what Destiny actually was until it came out and people could actually play it for a while. But anyway, so Spider-Man, I was really pleasantly surprised by Mega Man 11. I really enjoyed that.
Great game.
I was really pleasantly surprised by what else? What else did I play there? Yeah, Spider-Man, Anthem, Mega Man. Those were my top three. I really enjoyed, obviously, the Cyberpunk demo blew everybody away. Yeah. I really enjoyed Sekiro, the new From Software game. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really cool. I got to see a behind closed doors demo of that. That looked really, really special. Destiny 2, Gambit, I thought was pretty fun. And yeah, a bunch of other random little things that I played. I really enjoyed this little indie game called The Messenger that is like a Ninja Gaiden style 2D platformer. So I'm really stoked for that.
And that's for PC or for Switch?
It's for Switch and PC.
I'm loving the Switch, man.
Yeah, as long as it comes to Switch. I mean, really, the game that's just been dominating my thoughts is Hollow Knight because that game is just incredible. Mm-hmm. That game is like taking over my life at the moment.
That's cool. It's getting great feedback too, man. That's awesome, man. Nah, man. The reason I said that I love the Switch is I'm always traveling. I take the Switch with me, man. Sometimes I have to debate: should I buy the PlayStation or Xbox version or the Switch version?
No, never a debate. It's always the Switch.
I know, but I'm always buying for the Switch because it's like I don't want to wait until I get home and play. Let me just
you can play in bed. Yeah, you can play while watching TV.
You're in New York City, the train, or whatever.
Play on the subway. Yeah, I totally do. Yeah, it makes things easier. It gets to the point where like I'm bummed out if something isn't coming to Switch.
Yeah. So for those that are upcoming journalists, you know, I think it's a tough time because it seems like a lot of people are focused more on the YouTube and all this stuff, and they probably get their news on Twitter and. For those that are up and coming, what's like the right path for them, man? Like if they really want to get out there and be part,
it's tough. I mean, the media industry is volatile. It's always been. It's always gonna be. Who knows, like what that ecosystem is going to look like in the next few years. It's hard for me to give advice like focus on YouTube or anything like that because it's who knows what it'll be like in a few years. Like everything's constantly changing, right? Like maybe VR will be the next big thing. You have to only get your news in VR. Maybe you only get your news via like Instagram stories or whatever. So in that sense, I would say just like, first of all, if you want to be a journalist, you have to be able to write. So read a lot, write a lot, learn how to tell stories. But the best advice I can give people and what I always tell people is specialize. So like find something that you're really good at and get really good at that and make sure that people know that you're really good at that and build your career on that, whether it's interviewing people on podcasts, whether it's like covering esports, whether it's investigative journalism, whatever it is, just like find your niche and make sure that people like build yourself like a presence with that niche and try to build an audience based on that. And easier said than done, of course. And sometimes you don't know until you've done a bunch of different things and you figure out what you're good at. Mm-hmm. But in general, I found that the people who have the most successful careers are people who specialize.
So promote your book one more time and
sure,
people can get it, man. And is there an audio book version too?
There is. It's actually read by Ray Chase, who is the voice of Noctis in Final Fantasy 15.
That is awesome,
and he's great. He's fantastic.
That was your choice. Like I'm gonna find the right person.
He actually like tweeted at me asking if he could do it, and immediately I was like, yes, let's make this happen.
So he came here to record it here? Or
No. He did his own thing. Okay. I had nothing to do with the recording or anything. It was all through the publisher. Okay. So my book's called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. People can get it pretty much anywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, indie bookstores, libraries, wherever you want. You can also go.
My friend got a copy through the library.
That's great.
Yo, this is awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, I love that. I love when people support your local library. I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah.
And then, an audiobook through Audible or whatever else you want, iBooks, whatever else you use for audiobooks. And then I have another book coming out next year, but way too early. It doesn't even have a title yet, so I can't even talk about that yet.
Yeah.
Just keep an eye out, and I'm sure you'll find it. And people can also find me on Kotaku Split Screen, which is my podcast that I co-host with Kotaku's Kirk Hamilton. And he and I talk about all sorts of things in the world of video games. So check that out.
What you think of the podcast? I know you're a writer.
Mm-hmm.
You're writing your books. You're writing.
Yeah.
So as a podcaster, what were your thoughts on that?
It's great. I love it. It's cool. It's been fun to just be able to talk for an hour, and for some reason people listen. You know how it is.
Yeah.
It's like,
definitely.
Whoa, people are listening to what I have to say. It's crazy, right?
From everywhere.
Yeah,
Awesome,
yeah.
Cool, man. Jason, thanks a lot
thanks,
for
Danny.
taking some time. I know you've
Sure, of course.
really busy.
Yeah, no
But
worries.
hopefully we could talk some more in the future.
Yeah,
man.
of course.
E3 and all that.
Next
man.
book.
Yes, definitely. For
Fantastic.
sure.
All right, cool.
Thanks for listening to Gamertag Radio. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Thank you for listening to Gamertag Radio. If you'd like to donate and help us out for future events and more coverage and also better audio equipment, head over to donate.gamertagradio.com. That's donate.gamertagradio.com. Thank you.